Thank you.
Thank you. Don't leave. Jimmy picked a topic tonight, and I want him to explain why.
It's the approach that whatever you do in training has an effect on your body, and it can be positive and it can be negative. And it's the topic that we wanted Ian to explore through his decades of experience.
Thanks, Jimmy. Appreciate it. You know, the irony for me is this. When my grandmother washed her clothes, so it took, 2 hours just to wash clothes. So when I see so many people exercising, I appreciate that technology has given you that opportunity. And it is, you might think it's a wonderful thing that so many people are exercising at all ages throughout life. But here's the conundrum. Call it what you want. Are we really healthier for all the exercise that people are doing? I'd like to think that we can do better with our outcomes for the effort we put into training collectively. And that is where my message can come through and help you. But I've come to a conclusion over the decades that most of the damage we do to our body is done through the way we train, which is quite ironic because we're training to be better. So the information that I've developed has been over quite a few decades, and I started out with the intent to help the athletes perform better. I felt that you're never going to win a championship if some of your team are in the bleachers. So my development of training should make us better, not make us worse, was built around my desire to win on the field. It is important for me to help you avoid the pitfalls of training. Now, a few of you had the pleasure or the displeasure of my becoming more intimate with me over the last few days. And you've found out that I've helped you see things in your body that if you can address them, it will change your quality of life. And that's really important to me. Now, I know there'll be a bit of shyness, and some of you will say, I don't really want to ask that question for others. But what we have, I believe, is really powerful and it can help you. So let's start with a few fundamentals. How many fitness centres were there around in the 1980s? Not many. There were bodybuilding gyms, there were weightlifting gyms, and not much else. There's a few YMCAs. And it was really considered to be of weird people who went down a flight of stairs and trained in the dark and grunted. You know, you're considered a bit odd. There's a big change that happened in the 1990s. Science, for whatever reason, embraced strength training. And at that point in time, people who were doing PhDs in aerobic training suddenly became experts in strength training. Everybody wanted to know strength training. And they came up with amazing conclusions like it would help with your bone density if you did strength training, things like that. So the shift really occurred in the 1990s. But there's one problem here with strength training. What happens if you just do strength training and you ignore other qualities of training? I want you to do more than strength training. In fact, if I meet an athlete who's never done strength training before, I celebrate it. Because strength training is so powerful, it has the ability to change your musculoskeletal system faster than any of the others and more permanently. So you can mess your body up really quickly is what I'm saying. It's very easy to do so, not only from a performance perspective, but from a health perspective. With you is a little bit different than what everyone else is doing. Let's take, for example, in strength training. In the 1980s, I was told that if you did abdominals first, what would happen? It would weaken you. You couldn't do your abdominals training first because it would weaken you. So I bought into that initially. And then after I spent too much time getting my back treated, I changed my approach. So 40 years ago, I came to the conclusion that we should do this first. So that's one of the many things that we do differently. And I was the first person to reach that conclusion, and I've had a lot of rocks thrown at me in the interim. At the end of the day, nobody complains when they're healthy. You know, people who embrace that. And that's one example. I'll give you one more. I developed a concept called tension producing and tension reducing. Anything you do that tightens your muscle up is tension producing. Anything you do that softens and lengthens your muscle is tension reducing. I'm going to tell you this really simply. Flexibility is the most important form of training that you will ever do. It's the one that impacts everything else the most, and it's the one that should do further into life than anything else. Now, I know that's counter to the now post-1990s popular opinion that strength training is the king. But let me explain this. Strength is a function of length and tension. And length and tension are both addressed with tension reducing work. They are more important. They are the things that give you the function. They give you the strength. So they have to come first. And we don't really look for solutions until our back is against the wall. That makes sense? So for me, it's a pretty serious situation. A lot of my theories I've developed over the last 45 years are fairly personal, if that makes sense. But if a person doesn't have an injury, then they don't have a problem. When your body is degrading slowly, you don't even notice it's happening. In fact, that's the difference between an injury and recovery for rehabilitation. When you're injured, you go down and you don't even notice you're declining. You notice it when you're coming back up. I've learned more from rehabilitation than I have from going down. And that's the same with your bodies. Your body's declining and we don't even notice. And I'm going to continue a story about in the mid-90s, and it was literally in the mid-90s, maybe 95, 96, there was a new paradigm that stretching was bad. And that has since swept the world, literally. Now, if you didn't know about that and you just did it, I don't think you'd buy into it. But the people who hear that and are influenced by dominant trends have bought into it. There is less stretching being done now as a percentage of total training time than there was in the 1970s. And I believe that is one of the major contributors to injuries. So well, there's two things there. When you do stretching in a shitty way, you don't enjoy it. End of story. Yeah. So I get it. Like stretching is not stretching. There's this type of stretching. So the way we do it, I've had 45 years to develop. It's a bit different. But yes, if you are after instant gratification, you could ask the question, why? Well, like I just want to, pump iron, etc. Around about 2000, I wrote, I think it'll turn in a 10 years time, and it didn't. And then I've stopped writing that I think it'll turn. I actually don't think we'll embrace stretching in my lifetime. What happened in the 1990s, when they took stretching away from the people, they had to give them something in return. So it's okay to do dynamic stretching before, but you're not allowed to do static stretching. That was a trade-off. I really feel sad for the kids. I can go anywhere in the world and guess what everybody in every sport and every age group they're doing? Walking down the field. It's like, really? That's choreograph. You don't know a dancer? What the, it doesn't matter what sport, they're all doing the same thing. Like, it can't be right. But I'm not concerned by the presence of dynamic. I'm concerned by the absence of static. But as a general rule, and I don't mind what you do on game day, but on a general rule in training, if we don't reduce the load on our joints through pre-training opening of the joints, we've got a problem. And that's because I want a long career in sport. So my opinion doesn't matter. Your opinion only matters if it's based on your personal experiences. It shouldn't be based on a trend or what someone told you. You'll only know that by doing it, though. Yeah. You're not going to read that in a book. And if you did read a book, I wouldn't want you to believe it anyway. Go and find out. Like, do some sort of objective test. I have to do that with everything. I get something new and I say, I'm going to test it for a year or two, then I'm going to give it to a small sample group, they're going to test it for a year or two, and then I'm going to tell other people about it. I don't even release innovations in training until it's a decade I've tested it for, literally. I've been releasing innovations for 40-something years, and it's only after I've tested them. But, you wouldn't have listened to it if you hadn't needed it. No, I love an Olympian who's humbled by injury. I love the Olympian who can't go to the Olympic Games because they're... Yeah. But they don't all. I was sitting one day with someone near David's country who just won the gold medal in the Olympics, and he was the first person in his country to win the gold medal in that discipline. And he was in so much pain, and I told him what was going on, and his coach didn't like it, because they felt threatened that I'd found them out. He didn't go on with it. Never went back to Olympics. He's a gold medalist, the first in his country. Imagine how much money that would be worth to him. He'd never went back because he didn't listen to me. So not everybody listens, Paul. Yes. Well, to be honest, I don't know too many people who can effectively roll. But
my wife, 10 minutes to give up.
Yeah. No, big fan of massage. Yes. The challenge is finding a good masseur. There's too many masseurs who feel their job is to put you in pain. Mm. So I formed a saying some years ago, which that is done first is done best. And there's another reason you're stretching first. If it's the most important thing, you've got to do it first. What happens when you put it at the back of the session? It typically doesn't get done. And I know, because I've been there. And the same with abdominals. When it's at the back, it's 50% of the time you don't even do it. So the reason we put it up front is also because it's the most important thing. The rule in training I have is if you're tired and want to drop from the back end. And we all do it naturally anyway. So don't put the good stuff at the back end. The point you made about stretching, I can tell you this, if I go to any sporting event anywhere in the world at training day, the coach says, do your stretching, training will start at X o'clock. And they walk around, they shoot the breeze. The kids might be doing a bit, they might not. Like, the minute you tell that stretching is something you do in your own time, you have expressed your values. It's pretty clear. You don't value it. So I expect them to up and just listen, because every time they talk, that kid can't hear me. What right do you have to destroy his training session? You don't. I said, Tam, come in here. You want to be the coach? Make a decision now. You either take this session or I take this session. Which one is it? And I believe it was his first coach that made the difference, because my understanding was the flow says you will never pick up anything heavier than your tennis racket. Hallelujah. Because kids doing strength training, it's a whole different subject. I've seen it too many times. So yes, never panic about where you start. as long as you turn up for the next program and the next program, the next program, because a program has a finite life. Like, you'll know when it's time. I don't want to try and do it all in one. I want to have a sequence in program design that leads you to that greatness. So absolutely. Having said that, I don't buy into the strength coach mentality that all athletes need to be able to squat more than their body weight. That's bullshit. Like, anyone who talks like that's never worked with a Winter Olympian. Like, the majority of them are pretty fragile. Yeah, generally speaking, I'm not talking about the skiers, but there are sports. There's such diversity in humans and sports that I don't get into. Loading is not the king for me. It's the holistic approach that's the king. If anything is the king, it's flexibility. So anyone who is a professional will be familiar with the concept that I introduced some decades ago. I think it was in the Foundations book in 99 and 2000, the specificity continuum. So I said that if you are doing conditioning, it has to be really specific. Endurance training, energy system training. I don't run around the field mindlessly. I'll put the ball in their hand. It has to be specific. But if I'm doing flexibility, it doesn't have to be as specific. And that's where people say, static stretching, well, the athlete's dynamic. How can static stretching transfer? Well, find out, do it. Not every training modality needs the same level of specificity for it to transfer. I wrote about that in my 2000 book, How to Transfer, a whole book about transferring. And so the second most specific thing is speed training. If I do speed training on a surface that is not the surface I compete on, it's not going to transfer as well. That doesn't mean I have to be specific all the time, but sand training is a great example of specificity. And New South Wales Rugby Union, we're the fittest. We're the fittest. New South Wales Rugby Union in the Super Rugby competition have won one Super competition, one Super in 40 years of Super, just about. They're really good. Rugby based. The English Rugby Union team, they gave all the players ergos in the lead up to the World Cup. God bless them, 99 I think it was. That went well. For the manufacture of the ergos. But it doesn't take long for an astute individual who appreciates health or success in sport to get in touch with their body. When you first start with me, a lot of people say, well, Ian, I can't feel it. I don't know. Just tell me. But after a while, I'll help you understand what's happening in your body, because if you don't happen to understand it, no one is, because I'm not inside your body. Yes, why? Yeah, fantastic. I'm going to tell you a story. These are things that a lot of the things I've introduced over the decades have been embraced. Not everything, but everything I do, everything I teach will ultimately be embraced, but it could take 100 years, as Joseph Pilates found out. But we also had a really good university physiotherapy department. A lot of good research came out of University of Queensland in the early 80s. And I spent a lot of time with them. And I learned to value what they had for me. Didn't know enough about it, and so I believed everything they told me, which wasn't good. And I'm not trying to be critical, but I found out some hard ways that not everything they told me was accurate. But I really appreciate what I learned from them. And so I learned to respect the physiotherapists onwards. And I started seeing them do things, and I thought, well, they're in the clinic and they're doing things. The athletes aren't doing them training. How can I marry this together? So I married small muscle group training. I integrated into strength training. The first person to do it. And in addition to that, I termed the coin control and stability, which as a sub-quality didn't exist. But that's one of the many reasons why athletes have less injuries with my approach, or individuals, because we're doing a therapy-influenced modality integrated into your everyday training. And that's something that has been well embraced, the concept has been well embraced. The execution of it has been done really shittily across the world. I'm so sad. When I first put it to video in about 2000, I said on the video jacket, I said, I've been reluctant to teach this because I don't think that even watching a video, you'll get the hint. When you do it under the supervision of a coach who understands what I want, the training effect is very different. Yeah. The more aligned with how I want it done, the better the result. It's really important. And if it's something that does get bastardized pretty badly. So people are doing my methods around the world, but they really know how to make it messy. But let's take it back a step. There's a perception in the personal training world, God bless them, that you have 60 minutes. It's a magic number. If you were doing the 60-minute model, it's really simple. What do we put in it? If you were capped to 60 minutes, I can tell you what the rest of the world does. It's 50 minutes of strength training and 10 minutes of something else. That is the generic average. But as a physical therapist, hopefully you were trained on a goniometer or a similar thing you would call it in Italy. But even a goniometer is subjective. You get to a point where you look at something and say, this is what's going to happen. It's non-negotiable. This is what's going to happen. And that's the beauty of being a student of the correlation between state of the body and injury incidence. And unfortunately, the world has been blessed to give me a lot more examples of injury over the last 20 years. The explosion in injuries post-2000 has been amongst one of the greatest epidemics of the world, injuries. That it's not age that's the variable, it's the condition that you keep your body in. So if you keep your body vibrant and healthy as you age, you won't age as poorly. Having said that, you can still learn and come back. Your ability to increase your work capacity can go up, even as you age. Now, I'm not saying you're going to go to the Olympics and win them, but you can be better if your training gets smarter. And you need to be, because in a few years' time, your whole lifestyle will have a certain challenge, and the way the world trains, the trends will change, because trends always change in economic downturns and change in economic recoveries. So get ready for some changes. And I don't know what they're going to be, but stay with your values, because there'll be new trends. There'll be new trends that threaten you. Your friends will say, come and do it this way. If I go trend-based, I have to reinvent myself every 5 to 10 years. And I'm not putting that aside or shunning it for that reason. But what I want to do stuff that has fundamental grounding forever. Like, the body has been the body as we know it for a long time. Like, you know, if we did in fact evolve from another species, or whatever happened, you can go back in history and we're pretty much standing upright with 2 arms and 2 legs and 1 head for quite a long time. So there's no reason for us to get it wrong. I've never seen a time like this. I've never had so many athletes make poor decisions. And I'm talking about Olympians. And in part, I gotta be straight, the internet is a big part of that. You can jump on internet, and how many experts on exercise can I find on Instagram in about 30 seconds flat? Oh, about 2 million. Everybody's got a voice, and you can say that's great. When I started out, before you published a book, you had to be established. You had to have track record. Then you might have the right, because everybody would have laughed at you otherwise. Well, guess what? You can become an expert the day you decide you're an expert. You've got a keyboard, you've got an internet connection, and you've got a desire to be significant. Open an Instagram account and just vomit. Or do what some do and grab my content and plagiarize the shit out of it. Not that I'm suggesting you should. But the number of internet-based theories that she threw at me during that conversation was just, my head was spinning. I said, really? You're probably in your 50s, and the kids used to do this shit. On YouTube, I saw how to train this way. And now, people of my age are just, their mind is full of crap off the internet. And I don't think that's helping. Listen, I'm not saying, hey, I should be the only one to have a voice. God bless you, have a voice. But the people you're damaging along the way. So if you're looking for a solution, it's probably not going to come from the internet. So many people flog one area. They just bash one area and wonder why they don't get the results. If I can get 20 ways to improve and I can change them by 1%, I'm probably going to get a superior outcome. So I'm not saying diversity is a king, but I'm saying there's a lot of opportunities to improve. That makes sense? You know, in nutrition alone, we've got nutrition, we've got water, we've got nutritional supplementation. You know, we've got how we manage prescription drugs. You know, health is a big subject. It's how we manage the decision to have surgery or not. There's a lot of factors. But unlike the past, it's not so much that the information isn't there. It's which information do I follow? That makes sense? That's the difference. When Reg Park was bodybuilding in the 60s and the 70s, or 40s, 50s, does anyone remember Reg Park? He's an Englishman. You don't even remember Reg? Now, Reg made a really silly decision. He said, this country's too cold for my kids. I've got asthma. I'm going to take them to live in South Africa. I don't understand why he did that. Anyway. So Reg was an Englishman. In fact, his son came back and represented your country in swimming. But if I wanted to get hold of Reg Park's articles that he wrote in South Africa in the 1960s, pretty impossible. But now, you don't have that problem. You can get any information you want, and you don't even need someone to be an expert. They can just tell you they're an expert and you can get their information. So the challenge is not the availability of information like it used to be. It's what information do I follow? The other thing is the number of affluent people who say, I'm going to put a plunge pool in my backyard. It's quite funny because the information has been there a long, long time. It's just people now aren't hearing about it because it's a trend. So I'm a big fan of it, but I'm very cynical of trends. It's like tissue work. one of these so-called leading American writers who just decided one day that along with the internet, he was going to become significant, and said, we didn't know about tissue manipulation, explaining why he'd never spoken about it. And I thought, no, you didn't know about it. See, after the dot-com bust in 9/11, the mid-cycle slump in 2001, the appetite for holding high-cost inventory and manufacturing costs changed. Everyone just wanted to do the small stuff. So instead of making a weight training machine for each exercise that was a $15,000 machine, the model shifted to let's import stuff from China that people sell in a pool shop for 20 cents and sell it for 20 bucks. So people didn't know about tissue manipulation until they worked out how to sell a foam roller. And I am not joking. Yeah, I'm watching all this stuff unfold. And the same thing, the plunge pool. So I'm a little bit cynical around it, but yes. Trends aren't designed to serve you. Trends in training are designed to serve the commercial interests. I don't say that as a deep conspiracy theorist, but I've been saying that for quite a few decades. Trends are designed for people to make money, and you can choose to join those trends or not. Stretching is never going to be successful until they work out how to monetize it. And the only device, and I've said this time and time again, and with the exception of one idiot who's plagiarizing my work out of Australia, I'm the only one that says in the 80s they created a Van Damme device. So as I'm old enough to have seen it, this fucker has never seen one. Anyway, the only thing that worked out was the Van Damme machine. Wind it up and stretch you out, and that wasn't selling. So they said, "Wow, stuff this. We're not going to bother promoting stretching because I can't make any money off it." You don't stretch because strength training manufacturers don't make money off you. If you stretch, you're robbing them. So without getting too down the rabbit hole, which unfortunately there's too much going on these days, there's too many rabbit holes. Can't believe how many people are down the rabbit hole. But anyway, it's pretty straightforward. Do the best for yourself. Don't do the best for someone's commercial interest. I'm sorry. Training information should be pure. It should not be tied to a device. Because when I introduced bodyweight exercises into strength training in the late 90s, when I first published about it, I've been doing it for some time. And I know this sounds really weird. Like it was only 20 years ago. Yes, no one was doing bodyweight exercises in strength training around the world, generally speaking. I'm not saying in Germany, somewhere they weren't doing them. But when I integrated in them, there weren't many external devices. I can blow your body out with your body weight. I don't need an external weight initially. Well, guess what they did to my exercises very quickly? They put weights in the hands very, very quickly. In fact, I promoted the use of gluteals. I know it sounds really weird, but the posterior chain didn't exist in the world of strength training. If you have a look at Bill Pearl's, and God bless his soul, his book, Keys to the Inner Universe, where he categorized it was legs, it was chest, it was shoulders, it was arms, and maybe back. They were the categories. I was the first one that said there's quad dominant and hip dominant, not just quad dominant, there's hip dominant, and you need to prioritize your glutes, etc., etc. And so I introduced all these exercises, and within about 5 years later, some idiot came along and worked out how you could put a bar on your thigh and look like you were having sex in the gym with the barbell. Because you can't do an exercise with your body weight, not making money for somebody. You've got to have an external load. So that's an example of trends driven by commercial interests that don't serve you. And I can't say enough about it. I mean, I probably do say much. On that point, before I get too open, we probably shut Jimmy and thank you, Jimmy, and Paul and my coach, and thank you for coming along.